Welcome to Module 3. At the end of this module, participants should be able to define proliferation financing and distinguish it from money laundering and terrorism financing. Identify the international and Nigerian legal frameworks governing counter-proliferation financing. Understand the relevance of United Nations Security Council resolutions to legal practice. Recognize typologies and red flags associated with proliferation financing. Apply NBA-led compliance obligations relating to sanctions screening, asset freezing, and reporting. Appreciate the role of legal practitioners in preventing the misuse of legal services for proliferation-related activities. Let's begin by understanding the concept and definition of proliferation financing. Proliferation financing refers to the act of providing funds, financial services, assets, or economic resources, directly or indirectly, for the manufacture, acquisition, possession, development, transport, transfer, or use of weapons of mass destruction. This includes nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, and their delivery systems. Unlike money laundering, proliferation financing does not necessarily involve proceeds of crime. Funds may originate from legitimate commercial or governmental activities, but are diverted toward prohibited proliferation objectives. Proliferation financing is defined in Section 58 of the Terrorism, Prevention and Prohibition Act, 2022. It is the act of providing funds or financial services, including the transfer of assets, resources, or transit services, which are used, in whole or in part, for the manufacture, acquisition, possession, development, export, transshipment, brokering, transport, transfer, stockpiling, or use of nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons and their means of delivery. Paragraph B of Section 58 and subsection 3 of Section 59 also criminalize the provision of technical training, advice, or services related to nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons. This is of particular interest for legal practitioners, as they can unwittingly provide services to individuals or entities involved in proliferation financing. Counter-proliferation financing, CPF, refers to the efforts and measures aimed at preventing the financing of activities related to the development, acquisition, transfer, or use of weapons of mass destruction. This includes nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, as well as their delivery systems. CPF is a critical component of the broader financial crime prevention framework to safeguard international peace and security. Legal professionals have a responsibility to identify and report any transactions or activities that may facilitate proliferation financing, ensuring compliance with national laws and international sanctions. The source of funds for money laundering is always illicit. For terrorism financing, the source of funds may be illicit or licit. In proliferation financing, the source of funds is often licit. The objective of money laundering is to conceal criminal proceeds. For terrorism financing, the objective is to fund terrorist acts. In proliferation financing, the objective is to support weapons of mass destruction programs. The legal focus for money laundering is on criminal profit. For terrorism financing, the focus is on violent extremism. In proliferation financing, the focus is on international peace and security. The primary tool for money laundering is financial concealment. For terrorism financing, it is small value transfers. In proliferation financing, the primary tool is trade and sanctions evasion. For legal practitioners, proliferation financing risk often arises indirectly through commercial, corporate, or advisory services rather than overt criminal conduct. Let's discuss the regulatory framework. The Terrorism, Prevention and Prohibition Act, 2022, provides the statutory basis for implementing United Nations sanctions obligations. It criminalizes support, facilitation, or assistance connected to prohibited activities under United Nations Security Council resolutions. The Money Laundering, Prevention and Prohibition Act, 2022, recognizes proliferation financing as a distinct risk within the broader anti-money laundering and countering the financing of terrorism regime. It also supports the enforcement of asset freezing and forfeiture. The Rules of Professional Conduct for Legal Practitioners, 2023, impose specific obligations on legal practitioners. Lawyers must comply with targeted financial sanctions regimes. They are required to screen clients and transactions against applicable sanctions lists. If a positive match occurs, lawyers are obligated to freeze the affected assets immediately and notify the Nigeria Sanctions Committee through the Nigerian Bar Association Anti-Money Laundering Committee. Proliferation financing compliance is treated as a matter of professional responsibility, not external financial regulation. Lawyers are required to ensure that funds or assets of designated persons involved in proliferation activities are identified, frozen, and reported without delay. While Nigeria is not a weapons of mass destruction producing state, Nigerian legal practitioners may still be exposed to proliferation financing risks. These risks can arise through the incorporation of companies used for dual-use goods trading. They may also involve legal advisory services for import or export transactions that include controlled materials. Trust or nominee arrangements that mask beneficial ownership are another area of concern. Cross-border corporate structures linked to sanctioned jurisdictions pose additional risks. Finally, complex commercial contracts designed to evade sanctions controls are a significant typology. Proliferation financing schemes often exploit corporate opacity. They also take advantage of weak beneficial ownership transparency. Additionally, professional intermediaries are frequently targeted in these schemes. Legal practitioners may unwittingly facilitate proliferation financing by drafting contracts for sanctioned entities. They may also establish companies used for the procurement of controlled goods. Additionally, providing escrow, trust, or nominee services without adequate screening poses significant risks. Now, let's move to mandatory sanctions screening. The most immediate duty is to ensure you are not providing legal services to designated persons. Lawyers must screen all clients and their beneficial owners against the United Nations Consolidated List and the Nigeria Sanctions List. Lawyers are strictly prohibited from providing any legal or financial services to any person or entity on these lists. Next, let's address immediate asset freezing, also known as the zero-hour rule. If you discover that a client or an entity you are incorporating is a designated person or linked to proliferation, you must immediately freeze any funds, property, or assets in your possession belonging to that client. Lawyers are forbidden from tipping off the client. You must freeze first and report later. The freezing action must be reported to the Nigeria Sanctions Committee. If you suspect a transaction is linked to proliferation financing, you must file a suspicious transaction report with the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit within 24 hours through the NBAA MLC portal. For proliferation financing, standard Know Your Customer procedures are not enough. Lawyers must identify beneficial owners by looking past the immediate client to find who truly controls the entity, especially for shell companies. If a client is involved in importing or exporting specialized chemicals, electronics, or industrial machinery, you must verify if they have the necessary licenses to handle such goods. Apply higher scrutiny if the client has links to jurisdictions known for proliferation risks, such as countries under heavy United Nations sanctions. Institutional compliance. Your firm must have an internal defensive infrastructure by designating a senior person responsible for PFAMLCFT monitoring. Your firm must also conduct regular training to ensure all associates and paralegals can spot proliferation financing red flags. That concludes Module 3. By identifying proliferation risks and strictly following zero-hour freezing and reporting rules, you uphold international security and your professional duty.